Yeah, it says 10 a.m. Oh, that's 2017. I guess that's not right.
I couldn't find anything electronically, but that doesn't mean that it isn't out there.
Seventh, eighth. Yeah, I did find it on the calendar, November 11th, 2021, 10 a.m.
Right on the school calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just figured that Legion maybe we'll put something out here soon. All right. We are at 7 o'clock and I see we've got Dean joining. We are going to have a full roster here. Just give him a second. Just because we're electronic, Tyler, I might have you call roll. All right, it looks like Dean's connected. All right, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll have Tyler take roll. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands one nation under God, liberty and justice for all.
Call to order the November 2nd meeting of the Wabasha City Council. I don't believe we have a guest speaker this evening. Doesn't look like anybody's logged in that we would be hearing from, but we'll welcome any public comment, of which I also do not see anybody, unless somebody from staff wanted to make comment. All right. Oh, we are getting one more connection. No, it's Darren. Okay. All right. Hearing no public comment. Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda from staff or council?
Can you pull 8.6, the HUD policies, and move it to general under 10.8?
Sure thing. 10.8. I'd like to add 10.9. This just kind of came up at the end of the week. Carol and I were looking forward to her staff review process, and we need to also convene an ad hoc group to kick off the review policy for the administrator. And we can have that discussion at 10, general business 10.9. Any further additions or changes? Okay, hearing none, I'll share a little bit. It feels like there's been a lot going on, which is exciting. I'm going to try not to be redundant of Caroline's message. Thank you very much for patience with these Zoom meetings. I have to say, it's unfortunate. Caroline and I feel like we need to make that decision when the agenda goes out, so that everybody's clear what the format is at that point. Which now here we are a week later, things are better in our county. That's good news, but I'm trying not to zigzag all around and keep people in a constant state of confusion. So appreciate that. I just want you to know, we have not established as a city a metric by which we shift modes. And I think in part because we don't have to make that decision day to day. We have monthly meetings. But I do consult with the county public health department. I look at their data, I consult with their staff and leadership, and they advise us of this model. And so nobody loves it, but I appreciate your patience. We will get back in person. That is the goal. I cannot wait for it. In good news, the bonding tour, I'm not going to steal Caroline's thunder, but we're really excited about that. The State House Investment Committee is going to be with us on November 10th, which is right around the corner. And we're just getting those details solidified. In general, if you'd like to block time, It's approximately 1 to 1:30 that those folks will be with us. We'll start with a short presentation at the National Eagle Center, which is under construction, which is, I think, exciting. Representative Barb Haley urged that, and I think she will be pleased to demonstrate that progress for her colleagues. It really shows the capacity of this community to act on bonding. And then John and I will jump on the bus. I should step back a moment. The members of the Army Corps of Engineers will also be there to stand in solidarity as our partner on the bond, on the barge terminal project, because the legislators are actually going to be here thinking about both that barge terminal project as well as the Highway 60 reroute through the athletic field. So we're combining those two in our mind to create a narrative about rural resilience, because they're both about infrastructure, one about commercial navigation infrastructure and what it takes to keep that channel open, and one about important transportation infrastructure through our community, which serves the broader region and state. So we won't have much time to speak to them, but I would love it if members of council were there to show your support, and they may have, questions for you informally. I won't ask anybody else besides John as president of the Port Authority to stand there with me, but I think it's important to be there if you can. Should be exciting. So with that, I just want to say thanks. I don't know anybody here who's really engaged, but I know the city streets folks time a lot of their fall cleanup activities around Septoberfest, and I just appreciate that coordination. I know it means a lot to all the volunteers that make Septoberfest possible. It's just a marvel. I marvel every year at how fast it goes up and how fast it comes down and how important it is in the meantime. I was just checking with Tony. A lot of people ask me about Veterans Day celebrations because I think they believe the city to have a role in that. But of course, the American Legion does that wonderful program. So Tony checked that's on November 11th at 10 a.m. at the WK school. And that's great to participate in. I have had some informal conversations around EV charging. If anybody brings that up, that there's kind of a little interest group emerging around that. And so if you happen to hear anything or see anything about funding opportunities related to public EV charging, I think there's a lot of that in the air right now. Some of it came out of the Volkswagen settlement when they were misrepresenting their emissions data. And so there were a couple of funding opportunities that we missed during early 2021 when everybody was so distracted by COVID, but I suspect there might be more. Lake City and other close by communities have started to enjoy having some EV charging in their community. So I don't think it's probably too far away for us. So the personnel committee, I recommend, or I add to the agenda, and Caroline is going to talk about the Minnesota Housing Institute. And I think that's it for me. Yeah. Oh, it was really fun. We've been talking about trails as a part of the bike walk advocates group. Tony, Caroline, Craig, and I all intermittently participate in that. But I learned at one point that there have been communities that have successfully developed trail connections. They're not just for active transit, but also for recreation on ATVs and RTVs and snowmobiles. And a really nice group of people has emerged to look at that issue. Brian and a staff, another member of Bolton and Mink, helped to kind of tee up how you plan and kind of the requirements to make you fundable. And that was really enlightening, I think, for everybody involved. So that was fun to do today. So it's been busy, and I'll leave it at that. And let's see. We will go to our committee reports, and I'll start with Brian. Did you guys have utilities? I didn't look at the calendar.
Yeah, we met yesterday. It was very business as usual, so nothing to report there.
Tim, Planning Commission.
Yeah, we met on the 12th of October. We reapproved a solar farm CUP that was done, I think it was almost 2 years ago, and it hadn't started yet. Most of it was due to the COVID kind of pause. Our November meeting has been canceled, and our next meeting will be then on December 14th.
All right. Tony, streets and parks.
No street commission meeting today. There wasn't much to talk about. And then park board, we did not have a quorum. So we'll put that off until next month. And then I think you were talking about the electronic vehicle charging station. I believe there might be one or talk of it going in by the Eagle Center, but I'm not for sure.
Yeah, that's the group that urged me to bring it to the city's attention. And I said, well, let's get a little bit more information before we just bring it to the city's attention. Let's kind of see what we can learn. And I did a little research. I think Brian looked into it a little bit, and it looks rather promising that there's different methods to get the infrastructure funded, and sometimes it's by the utility. And so I reached out to our Excel contact to see if he could educate us a little bit too. So early stages, but I know that that has actually come up several times. Multiple people have asked me about that. I think, with the advent of pickup trucks, electronic pickup trucks, we'll see more, rural people wanting those kind of vehicles, and it might be a little rapid here. So that's good it's good for us to look into it. John, Port Authority.
Got on mute. We met on October 19th. Just real quickly, I'll start at the top and I'll end at the bottom as well. We're going to change our start time to 5:30. It's still going to be on the third Tuesday of every month, but at 5:30 rather than 7 o'clock. So mark that on your calendars, and please don't show up at 7. We'll probably all be going home at that time. General business was much the same. We had a great presentation from Scott Lean. He is one of the owners of GrandPad, and we know that business to be downtown Wabasha, next to the hardware store. Kind of a great success story. I didn't, shame on me, I didn't write down the numbers, but the numbers of employees that he has brought on over the last 24 months, 36 months in this town is really remarkable. And he's looking for more. So that was really nice to hear. Our new representative from CETA that works for us on behalf of the Port Authority and Development Agency has just hit the ground running. She's got us looking at different plans and different assessments of our community with respect to development, both commercial and residential, and getting us involved in a few things that's going to hopefully help us and provide some tools into the future for that as well. We spoke about the meetings that we had with the Army Corps and then obviously the bonding tour that's coming up, but I'll let Caroline kind of touch on that. So again, everybody, 5:30 start, not 7 o'clock. I have to remind myself of that. I had to ask Caroline just a few minutes ago if it was indeed 5:30 now. So that's it.
Thanks, John. Any other committees or departments want to have a comment or update for council? Got good staff participation tonight. Lots going on at the library. It makes me miss having little kids because there's stuff I want to go to, but I think my children feel they've been there, done that. We're going to stage, but I really appreciate it. And the story on the river has been really a nice thing that's come out of COVID that probably should never go away. It's just great. All right, anything further? Otherwise, we will hear our administrator's report and then move to the consent agenda. Take it away, Caroline.
Yes, I tried a different format on the administrator's report, and I'm not going to read it, but it just says key project goals and progress. And so this is kind of what I distilled from my initial conversations at the start of my term with everybody about the key goals and progress and kind of where we're at. So in terms of that Highway 60 reroute and athletic field, again, I think everyone mentioned it. We're thrilled to be on the state bonding tour. And the other piece that is happening is Brian Mullum, our city engineer, is preparing what I call a rebuttal to the state of Minnesota for the proposed amount turn back funding. So not unlike the county's proposal, they proposed 1.6 million. We had estimated 4 million. So we're trying to come to a compromise on what we might get from the DOT as part of the project. And then in terms of the barge terminal project, we're going to be working on comments to the Section 217D agreement, which formalizes our partnership with the U.S. Army Corps. And I think getting that signed will be a really good step. And then the DMMP, that draft materials management plan, will come out next spring. And then in terms of our ambulance service, there are several items on the agenda, but the ambulance task force has met. They're meeting next Monday at 5 o'clock, and they are going to be hearing the results of a survey that we did of approximately 29 current and former crew members. So if any other council members are interested in learning about that survey, I would encourage you to attend that meeting. And then I'm also hoping that at that meeting, we decide on what different organizational structures might we want to look at. We've had, definitely Tyler and I have had a lot of work on the Eagle Center project. The state of Minnesota deed office has made it very clear that we are the fiscal agents in this process. So we need to be as much and up to date on what's required as everyone else. So the current status is we are still working to assemble documents that they need to finalize releasing the bonding funds, the $4 million in bonding funds. And then I think a lot of this has been mentioned today, but just around community and economic development in Wabasha. Kathy's doing a great job. A local group is forming to look at building an all abilities playground. And what that means is to build a playground that is friendly and accessible to all individuals with disabilities. And it's being led by a group of people with children with disabilities or works for Great River Homes. So, and then we're involving other people like physical therapists from St. Elizabeth. So that's a pretty good group. And then in terms of the Wabasha Kellogg multi-use trail connection, we'll be pursuing a joint grant for a planning assistance grant that would not only look at that trail connection, but planning on making Wabasha and Kellogg a regional recreational destination. So we know we have a lot of assets that will just further that planning. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we can take a moment to take a look at the consent agenda. We have our minutes from our October 5th meeting, the warrants. We have the assessment resolution around properties to be assessed for utilities. We have our board and commission appointment. I missed Jeff and Dean last month. I'm very sorry about that. That possibly could have helped you with your quorum, Tony. We had a big packed agenda and we were so tired at the end, I neglected that additional business item. So we have Dean joining the Parks Commission for your consideration, Jeff joining Streets, and Monica Walters rejoining the Ambulance Commission. We have a resolution to accept additional grant funding from the DNR. We are going to remove item 8.6. We have item 8.7, approval of ambulance billing services, which begins, I think, this month, and approval for temporary casual ambulance staff. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move.
Second.
Great. We have a motion from Tim Wallerick, second from John Friedmeier. Any further discussion? And we'll have a roll vote.
Woodley,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Salo,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Falcom,
Yes.
Durand.
Yes. Very good. Motion prevails. We have in our general business, the 2022 police squad, and I think Joe is here. They're looking for approval to proceed with this purchase. But Joe, do you want to share anything in detail?
Yeah, this is the 2022 Explorer. So it's the state bid. And the only thing that we're doing different with this one is we did some number crunching, and there's such an expense on the back end with getting these things set up, and labor costs through the companies that do that. So we did some number crunching, and Ford now comes out with it fully outfitted as far as the lighting goes. And checking around, I think people have been pretty happy with how they have that set up. So it'll take some on the back end away from the setup costs. It should save a couple grand. So this one's at 43, and if we had not done that, it would have been about 39. I don't have those numbers in front of me. I think it was like 39. I think it was about an additional 4, but we had about 12 into setting up the last one. So this will just eliminate the labor on doing all the lights. We'll still have to do cage, center console, that sort of thing.
Great. Any questions for Joe? Do we have a motion to approve the 2022 Ford Explorer for police?
I'll move.
We have a motion from Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
I didn't see who that was. Jeff?
Yeah.
We have a second from Jeff Sola. Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll vote.
Walrick,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Falcom,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Durand.
Yes. All right, this item, approval of the debt structure for the downtown reconstruction project, has a little bit lengthier description. I'm not going to read that. I'm sure you have. But essentially, there are two options proposed. One is to proceed as planned with more limited county participation. One is to postpone Second Street to 2027, which adds some uncertainty, but provides some flexibility in how the project would ultimately be designed. Caroline, what else would you like us to think about as we consider approving debt structure for downtown reconstruction second?
Yeah, just that we had a meeting at the county and we were able to not negotiate a higher dollar amount, but it appears that we will negotiate that they will keep jurisdiction of these roads. And what that means for us is that it's their future liability on the roads, and that will continue to get a small, modest amount for maintenance of those roads annually. In speaking with Brian Malm, and he's on the call today, it looks like what we might seek for approval today is just moving forward with the Pembroke Main Street loop, which would essentially be option B somewhat. And then for Second Street, since we're looking at potentially considering not reconstructing all of Second Street, but since the county is not giving up jurisdiction, Brian could work on a proposal to address some of the older infrastructure in terms of sanitary and water lines, and maybe address some of the issues that were in my memo about staff concerns that we had without redoing the street. So I think today we're looking for a motion to move forward with the bonding funds required to do the Main Street Pembroke project. And then we would come back with a future proposal on what we would be looking at for Second Street. Brian, I don't know if you want to explain that just a little better there on what we might be looking at for Second Street instead of a full reconstruction. That's currently was proposed.
Sure. Basically what we'd be looking at is using trenchless methods or investigating that to line the sanitary sewer pipes and do some manhole rehabilitation instead of digging it all up to try to minimize the disruption to the surface and the costs and replacing the surfacing that would result from digging it up, since the county participation was low and the city would be responsible for a large part of that surface replacement. I guess the goal is to attempt to develop a project where we would minimize the surface disruption by doing trenchless methods to try to reduce the overall project cost and the overall city share of the cost on that section of the project. So we just need a little time to investigate that and develop some cost estimates for that for your consideration.
Essentially, my layperson's understanding of the county's response, and it was very civil, and they're, they gave us plenty of time to, I think, for us to make our case, is that they still see a significant amount of useful life in these roads. And so we're dealing with a need for utility updates, but they wouldn't necessarily justify a full reconstruct based on the condition of the roads. Craig asked if we could have and thanks Craig for being there today and speaking, and Brian as well. If we could have a sort of a conversation about whether that, whether we agree on the condition of the roads, but I think they're holding pretty firm. At least I got a sense from at least 3 members of the board that they feel that this approach, which is to say pay for what they would do if it was their road, is consistent with the decision they made on a roadway in Elgin that did take over, have jurisdictional transfer. So I think they're going to remain rather firm on that. I had hoped that perhaps they might, for this project or even maybe future projects, would consider doing some policy work. Brian has pointed out that multiple communities that he works with have county level policies on cost sharing. Their administrators' sense from the board's feedback was that it doesn't happen very often. And so there wasn't a lot of interest in that investment of time, but I welcome it anyway. And I saw some nods that, yeah, that's probably good. Probably would be good policy work if we did it. But for this short term, in terms of moving on into 2023 project, they have, and I think that was news to a couple of their commissioners, but that's okay. That happens to me too, where you're like, oh, that was in our plan or it wasn't in our plan. The work that they have allocated this amount for is in their 2023 road plan. And of course, it's in our plan for 2023. We're just doing the best we possibly can to line up our priorities. And, I think that this, as outlined, that does achieve that. Anything else, Craig, that I'm misrepresenting or just missing entirely from the discussion?
No, I think you represented it correctly. I just have a thought. I'm looking at the capital financial plan for 2023. So downtown is 5.7 million, and then barge terminal is 2.7, and athletic field is 2.2. So we're running up around $10 million. We're getting 760 from the county. How are we going to raise that other money? Is that all going to be bonded?
So Carolina, can I speak to this?
Mm-hmm.
So Craig, keep in mind that the athletic field in 2023 is predicated on the idea that you would do Highway 60 in 2024. So if you aren't able to put together, if you don't receive funding for Highway 60 and are able to do that in 2024, you wouldn't pursue the athletic field in 2023. So it's not a certainty that you would do that. The funding for the athletic field, I think the intent in the plan was to utilize some of the funding that would come from the barge terminal to pay for a portion of the debt service on that, at least. So I guess the point I was trying to make is that the athletic field is contingent on Highway 60 and isn't necessarily a certainty, and you would have to get some additional funding to fund the Highway 60 project before you would dive into the athletic field. Did I represent that right, Caroline?
That still leaves us, so just look at the downtown project. So it's 5,700,000 and some thousand. We're getting 700 and some thousand from the county. How are we raising another 5 million?
Well, you've got the 1.25 million in local road improvement program grant funding that would go towards that. So, and the remainder, what the financial plan shows on the remainder of it, you got assessments, and then it's projected that water and sewer funds would cover the debt service on the remainder of that bond, because it is largely a water and sewer project that you're disrupting the surfacing for and then replacing the surface as a result of that, but also doing some of those improvements downtown that you want to see.
Yeah, it would be nice if when we get some free time, if we could do a one-pager on how that's going to be financed. I think that would be beneficial to the taxpayers.
Are you saying for the downtown project?
Yeah, let's just do the downtown project for now.
Like an explanation of the numbers that are there in the budget? Okay. Because it is outlined, but it wouldn't be understandable for an average reader of this budget to understand.
Well, it's 5.7 million. Where is the 5.7 million coming from? That's the question.
It's down below under cash and debt.
What does that mean?
So 1.675 million in funding from the county and in grant funding from MnDOT. The remainder of the funding, which is 4.6 million, which is inflated. So that $4.6 million there, that includes inflation between the time when the estimates were made and 2023. So that $4.6 million number is funded with a bond that you would sell. And then down at the bottom there, it's got a breakdown on where the payments for the bond would come from. And 10% is assessments, 65% sewer rates and or sewer fund, and then 25% water fund. So you're selling a bond and you're paying back the bond with revenues from those sources.
Public improvement policy, 20% on geo bonds.
It is, but this is a conservative assumption that Mike Bubani made to represent a worst case scenario. So yeah, you would still apply your local improvement policy and the 20% and garner the assessment revenue based on the policy. But I think Mike uses conservative assumptions here for the financing plan.
Got it. Thank you.
I don't have it, but so that's why I'm asking for a one pager. This is spreadsheet's a little difficult to follow. You could just spread it out and, it would take 2 or 3 paragraphs and that would solve. And we could have that ready for public meetings for anybody in the public that wants to know, instead of having say, oh, take a look at the spreadsheet, figure it out. That's a bit much.
Does anybody have any other questions about how this is proposed? I think we're finding ourselves needing to go with sort of a version of option B moving forward on the Main Street Pembroke portion, getting further clarification on 2nd Street.
And then Pat has joined us, and Pat, this also might be news to you, but I think my goal is for Brian and Pat to sit down on what those strategies for 2nd Street might look like, so we can make sure that this is a good long-term plan. So Pat, do you want to add anything?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
As far as the 2nd Street's not as concerning to me. I mean, yes, we have a lot of issues there, but as far as water infiltration, 2nd Street is a higher level than we are on like Main Street. And, if we, like Brian was talking about doing linings and stuff, might be a good option up there. I guess we haven't talked about it until just now I heard about it, but I definitely think that might be an option.
Yeah, sorry, the timing's not ideal. You're like, everyone's learning about this in real time. The county board meeting was today. And so it was really only in just brief preparation for that meeting so that we were sure that their engineer and administrator were, understanding kind of where we were coming from, that we learned of sort of the board's expected position. And Mike was right on about kind of where his board is at. So we were, arriving at these kind of conclusions about where we might be headed next this morning at about 10. So. But better than tomorrow, having to wait for December. So, all right, anything further? Otherwise,
Do you need a motion
I think we do.
to adopt option B?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, John. We have a first. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second from Brian Woodley. Any further discussion? All right, we can take a roll vote.
Malcolm,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Duran,
Yes. All right, we have now the option to approve the police union contract for the 2022-2024 period. You have a outline of summarizing the process, including meetings between the city administrator and ad hoc committee. We had representation from council, both Jeff Sulla and Brian Woodley, and our clerk, and have arrived at a final agreement. There's also, for your perusal, if you haven't already, the redlined agreement. And any initial questions before we consider a motion? do we have a motion to approve the labor agreement?
I'll make the motion to approve. I thought the process was really cooperative between both sides. Everybody gave some and to make it work. So I'm happy with where we ended up.
All right,
I'll
we have a
second that.
great motion from Brian Woodley, a second from Dean Moyer. Any further discussion? Thanks for those comments, Brian. All right, hearing no further discussion, we can take a vote by roll.
Walrick,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Falcom,
yes,
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Duran.
Yes. Yeah, I should say, I don't want to click through these items. I know a lot of work has gone into this. If anybody has any, need to pipe in, or I need to stop or go back, please interrupt me freely. I never mind being interrupted, especially in this format where it's a little harder sometimes to know whether there's a moment to comment. So hearing a unanimous vote, I think we're good. All right, and now our charter commission. So this gets more and more interesting. So our city's attorney provided us with a memo in October reviewing the process needed to establish our charter commission, which has been urged. The next step for us is to decide on the number of members that we'd like to see on the commission. No more than 15, no fewer than 7. We have to discuss how members will be solicited, whether by application, nomination, or both, I suppose, and then selected. And so Mike indicated the current city council members can hold a position on the charter commission. Jeff has expressed interest to me. So we have at least one member of our current council willing to serve. When the council has decided who will be recommended for appointment of the commission, then we have to adopt a resolution. And then the chief judge makes the appointment. But it is clear to me that a lot of this is in our hands in terms of being motivated to see action on this. The resolution suggesting appointments and a proposed order of appointment would then be transmitted. After that, and I'm not trying to in any way, take the energy out of that. But then after that, you might remember, then there is a secondary process by which that charter commission puts forth recommended changes, or as I understand it, council can do that. So I don't think it hurts at this time or at some other time to discuss whether we think it's going to be both, or whether we think that primarily this work is going to be conducted by the commission. But I think we need to consider that we may have to have an active role to get anything out of this process. But that's just that's my half half empty project manager brain thinking we probably can't delegate this to some other lovely group of people. We'll probably have to have a role. Aside from establishing amendments to the city charter, then the subject of Wabasha becoming a statutory city has been questioned. So for those of you who've had any amount of conversation with the city's attorney, you'll find that when we're exploring an issue that has something to do with our charter, for instance, when we had the election and then a incompatibility of office, the attorney has to spend quite a lot of time vacillating between, which is natural, of course, for the attorney, but between looking at what the statute says about our authority, what our charter says about our authority, which one trumps the other. I think it's sometimes our charter has more authority. Sometimes the statute says, nope, it's the state's law. And then of course there's case law. And at the time that we were looking at this incompatibility of office, there were two themes that were real evident to me. One is sometimes I wonder what it'd be like to be a statutory city. I'm sure there are ups and downs. And so we can in parallel look into that. The other thing that I thought is, is our charter really that bad, or are there maybe some key elements that we would want a charter commission to kind of focus on? I think I've read other charters, Lake Cities, and as an example, it reads just fine, but then there's a lot of specificity that are in there that I think, would you really want to have to weed through all that specificity if a particular issue came up in your city? So I've been considering those things as I've thought about who might be nominated or urged to apply. And I'd welcome others to kind of share their thoughts about whether they think they could name some people and make nomination, or whether they think it's going to be, we might have to think a little bit more about how we're articulating this responsibility to get people to come to the table. And I say that as context for, how many people do we think we could get to serve, knowing that Jeff would be a willing member. So I was thinking we're a pretty small city, 8, 7, 8 was sort of what I had in mind. I welcome other people's thoughts.
I think I'd like to see 9.
We might have agreed on 9 last meeting.
We did talk about 9, yeah.
Okay,
And
good.
I think we did. And I recall that too. I can remember if that's a conversation I had with myself or with Caroline. I should have gone back and listened to the meeting, but I think that did come up. That does give you a little buffer, I guess, if you lose somebody, which is inevitable.
Sorry that we didn't reflect that in the memo, but 9 was approved.
Okay. Do we want to, and I don't know if that requires, I guess, formal action, possibly, yeah. We want to also probably in the same resolution, if we can, suggest our process. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I guess my thought is since it is a commission, why don't we have people apply like any other commission? I agree with the 9. So that was my thinking on that. And then we would treat that like anything else. We would look at it at council, and if we get more than 9, we'll have to kind of weed 2 or 3 out, I guess. So I'm hoping we get 9, so we don't have to nominate. But I think we want to kind of keep it open to maybe nominating somebody if we don't get 9 applications. So I for surely think they should apply like any other commission. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Tim. Anything else? Anything from anybody else in terms of process that would be consistent with other commissions and boards and demonstrates an interest? Certainly, absent a process of nomination, you can urge at your discretion the application of those that you feel would be good contributing members.
I would also encourage that people apply and we keep it at 9. And I would say if we don't have 9 applicants, then I would jump on board and be one. So.
Okay. All right. Any disagreement, or we can probably move forward with, I think that seems feasible. Keep some momentum on this topic. If we'd like to hear a nomination for a charter commission of 9 members that would make application to the city.
Application by when?
Good question.
60 days?
Yeah. 90.
I'll add applications within 60 days.
Sure. This is a busy time of year. And I guess there are members who I'm thinking about people who reside elsewhere for part of the year that we might lose a little bit here, but I don't think that timeline is a problem, because you do want to see some desire of participation, or I don't think we can look forward to much getting accomplished. Any dispute or other suggestions related to the time frame? Otherwise, we would say 9 members make an application within 60 days.
I would even go as far out as 90 days if that makes more sense.
It's fine. Okay. Do we have that nominate, or do we have that motion formally? 90 days, 9 people by application.
And then review and
I'll make
approval
that
by
motion.
city council.
Yes.
I'll second the motion then.
Dean, did you make that motion?
I did.
Okay, great. We have a first from Dean. We have a second from John. Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll vote.
Walrath,
Yes.
Stella,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Welcome,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Durand.
Yes. Great. All right. Next on the agenda is the approval of fire department air packs. The department's got an old and increasingly high maintenance system, and they've proposed updating their air system and also updates to electronics and lighting systems in the rescue boat. And I see we have Darren with us. Darren, let us know what would make this understandable.
Okay, what we would do is, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
What we'd like to do is we want to upgrade the electronic system on our rescue boat. Right now we're running off a system that's about 8 to 10 years old on there, and with technology and stuff, we'd like to update that. And then we'd also like to update the lighting system on our boat with some more LEDs and stuff to make it night rescues and stuff a little bit more visible for us in the boat. long story short here, the fire department would take the money for the electronics and the lighting, which is about $8,000 out of our gambling fund, which would be our pull tab fund. And we would donate that money to the city. And then we turn around and buy the equipment for the boat as needed. So that would be funded from our relief association, from our fundraiser, basically our fundraisers. The second, any questions on that?
That's clear to me.
Okay. About the air pack, what we're looking at doing is updating our compressor at the fire station. And what that is we have a 20 to 25-year-old compressor there that fills our SCBA bottles. And this system is the compressor itself, like I said, being 20, 25 years old, it gets inspected every year and it passes inspection, but we're putting a lot of money into this thing recently. And now we're having the system where it's shutting down on us, and it's kind of leaving us hanging. It's time to update this thing. And I was looking earlier in the years before to replace this, and I thought, well, if it's passing inspection, we can make this work. But now we're having issues of not able to fill bottles when we need to. And anyways, with that compressor is a fill station that we had at that station since I started there. And so it's a man-made cylinder that holds their SCBA bottles in there when we fill them. And this thing has to be up to compliance. But anyway, I'm looking at spending $30,000 on this new unit. And this would basically allow us to fill a couple bottles at a time and give us a better quality air reading when we're filling the bottles. So basically right now the compressor gets tested every year to make sure that it's putting out quality air into them bottles for us to breathe in. And we're just making it by the passing numbers. And I don't feel comfortable with that anymore. So anyway, I'm looking at replacing that. I do have money in my budget, in my equipment replacement fund to do this. And that's where I'm at tonight.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Darren. I'll make motions.
Great. We have a motion to approve both these purchases from Dean. Any second?
A second.
Second.
We have many seconds. I heard Brian first, then there was an echo. So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, one question on the boat. What kind of electronics are you need for $8,000 for that boat?
So what we're doing is we're putting a Helix 15 on there, which is a Humminbird Helix, and that would be a 15-inch monitor on there with a second monitor, which would be able to scan the bottom, and we'd be able to do side imaging with the second monitor. So this will give us the opportunity to do about a 40 to 50 foot sweep out of both sides of that boat when we're looking for, body
Whatever.
recovery or something along that line. So it's definitely something we need to do to try to keep up with the technology. It's sad to say, but this is what we're doing more and more with this boat is we're actually going out and spending a couple days at a crack on here looking for recovery. And I just want to be up with everybody else and kind of be able to, if something happens, I don't want to be waiting for something else. I'd rather have the technology to go out there and be ahead of the game.
So is
And
this
then
part of that grid search thing you and I were talking about a while ago?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so it just makes it more efficient and you can do it in more of a timely manner rather than just kind of going all over the place.
Right. Right now we're kind of reading off a sonar system on the bottom. And so we get a figure on the bottom, but it's never what we need to make sure that before we send a diver down there, we have to make sure we're seeing what we see. And right now the clarity of the one we got is not giving us whether it's a dock or log or if it's a fish or it's a shoe. We don't have that, and this will give us that capability. So I think that that quickness of getting out there and be able to do a quick scan is very important, especially when it comes to colder water.
Very good. Thanks for that question, Jeff. Any further discussion or questions for Darren? Otherwise, we have a motion in a second. Okay, hearing none, we'll take a roll vote.
Welcome.
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Durant.
Yes. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Darren. We appreciate it. All right, and with this was on the agenda, I like to add things and then forget about them. So it's good this is actually listed. So we need to convene an ad hoc personnel committee for the evaluation of our performance of our city administrator. We did not do this. We haven't done this for a while because Chad's resignation occurred before we would have done it that year. So my recollection is we convened Brian, Jeff, John, and myself. No, it must have just been three of us. It must have just been Brian, Jeff, and myself. John probably served in prior years. We met with the department heads. We sort of split up the department heads and had individual conversations with those folks, and then discussed in the context of sort of the same evaluation form that's utilized for other city staff. And then we sort of summarized those findings. And then once we establish this group, I want to regroup with Brandon Fitzsimmons, who advises us on employment law, about what the process is for our actual review, whether there's any closed portion of that meeting discussing employee performance, or if we just simply say, our administrator had a satisfactory review. That I cannot remember. It's possible that I could just go back and figure out what meeting that was and we would know, but I still feel most comfortable asking, since it's been a little while, what our procedure needs to be for complete council. But I think to get this process started in a timely fashion, and it also aligned with the personnel reviews for everybody else in the city, we should probably get an ad hoc group together. I'm willing to serve on that again. I don't mind whatever, getting the attorney's piece of it done. If others would like to participate, we just can't have any more than three of us. And then as I recall, Wendy participated, and I don't really remember if we included her in some of the process and not in others. I don't think we tasked her with we didn't task her with the the supervisory responsibilities of the administrator with any review, but I think she maybe just participated for continuity's sake. And she is, of course, our policy person. And so I think that was the reason for having Wendy involved in some level of those discussions. Any recollections for you, Brian or Jeff, that I'm not remembering?
No, I think we had some kind of structured questionnaire, I think, with maybe a rating scale, like a 1 to 5, or it was just questions that we gave out, and then we split up staff and each took 3 people or whatever, department heads, and talked to them. That's what I remember.
Yeah, and whatever format that is, I think, in my experience, oftentimes leadership roles, like, a leadership role, like an administrator, has a very specific kind of leadership evaluation, because a lot of the role is related to how they lead other leaders within the organization. So that can all be discussed in that ad hoc committee, but I feel like we had that conversation. That's what we arrived at, kind of a leadership oriented evaluation format. But obviously the conversations with the department heads were relatively unstructured, and we welcomed any feedback that they might want to share regardless of the format. Anyone else would like to participate? I think we could get to work on this in at least setting up our structure mid-November and start to do some of that conversing.
I'm willing if needed. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'll continue to do it if you'd like to have me on board.
Okay, sure. I think, some continuity is great, and then we'll report back to council where we're at. Maybe we'll have even made some progress by December's meeting. We won't probably have that. I doubt we'll have the complete review, but we'll certainly aim to have an update on and some progress by our December meeting. So that would be, we would entertain a motion for John, Brian, and myself to serve in that capacity, with Wendy joining us as staff as needed, probably to set up the meetings. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I move.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Craig. Thank you. All right. And any further discussion or thoughts from anybody not participating that you want us to move forward with? All right. I'll go ahead and get to the city's attorney right away. I just was going to do it, and I was like, well, that's presumptuous. Maybe nobody wants me on that committee, so I'll wait till we have it established, and then I'll do that. So I'll talk to Brandon Fitzsimmons soon. All right. And we'll be reaching out to the department heads. Any further discussion, or we'll entertain a roll of vote? Okay, hearing none.
Woodley,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Moyer,
yes,
Falcom,
yes,
Friedmeier,
yes,
Durant.
Yes. All right. And our next item is Skyline Drive Streetlight petition. So we have before us a petition that had some information, but perhaps not enough for us to move forward. There were 10 signatures on the petition. Depending on where lights are requested and the quantity, we would have additional cost considerations to make and possibly electrical services, not just monthly payments. So staff recommended that we send a letter to each property or person that signed the petition and asking for another one with more information. So we can make this have consideration of this issue. Also helping them to understand the costs can be assessed to the property owners just so they understand the resident or property owner's component of this. So that before us, if we choose, we could deny the petition for lack of information and then move forward with these additional steps.
I move to approve staff to go ahead with sending the letter and asking for additional information. I used to live up on Skyline, and there are some holes up there that are kind of creepy, dangerous. So I know where they're coming from. So we'll put it back on them and see where it goes.
Second.
All right, we have that motion, as I understand, a motion to deny and request further information. Certainly open to hearing that once we understand what they would really like. We have a first from Brian and a second from Jeff. Any further discussion, or we will take a roll vote and reach out to those property owners. Okay, hearing none.
Falcom,
yes,
Walrick,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Moyer,
yes,
Friedmeier,
yes,
Woodley,
Yes.
Durant.
Yes. You know, we have an excellent staff, and I don't say this in any way to suggest that we don't do this, but I was listening to something that was talking about, you know, what if government was the opposite of how we've set it up. We've set ourselves up in government as like sitting behind a glass window, making it seem like we don't really want to engage with the public when that isn't the spirit of our city and our staff. And so it was trying to think about how would we reframe this, you know, the kind of the car salesman approach, where as soon as somebody walks in the door, you know, they get up out of their desk chair and greet you. And I always think about with these kinds of issues related to variances or petitions, if there's ways for us to improve our processes and kind of the quality of the experience that members of the public have with us, because I think it really sets the tone when people feel like they've been heard. And I even think, you know, recognizing that we have a member of council that lived there and understands where this is coming from, we just simply need more information so that there isn't a sense that this is a pushback and we're not making them jump through hoops. We're just getting the information we need to make the appropriate decisions. Because I know we have staff that definitely deliver on that spirit, but I'm sure residents sometimes feel like, oh, why didn't they just tell me this in the first place? Well, we do have processes. Sometimes they're friendly, sometimes they're a little clunky. But... All right. And we had an addition, which was from our consent agenda, the HUD policy. So if you revisit the consent agenda item, what was item 8.6, you can click on that item. So these were the HUD policies aligned with our Centra grant, as I understand it. Caroline, you want to outline this for us?
Yeah, it's our own grant. It's a CDBG CV funds.
Okay.
And I did ask of Deed, could we just go with the prior motion? But the other documents were in reference to our housing rehab program with Centra, and this is in reference to the HVAC replacement program.
Is it the same policy language as far as you can tell?
It's the same policies, yes.
Did you have any questions or thoughts about that, Brian? Since we
Yeah, I pulled it for two reasons. One, just to clarify that it's exactly the same thing that we voted for before. I think Carolyn, when I talked to her, said they just changed the grant number. So they're making us do it again. Second, I wanted to separate the motion, the excessive force one from the other ones, to have a separate motion. It's a grant funding program, and the government just had to insert their overreach into our local police department, and I hate it. And so I want to vote no on that one.
Okay, so that's it. I think that's doable though. So we'd be voting, we would have a motion to approve the section 3 policy, the residential anti-displacement plan, and the drug-free workplace. Then we'll do a second resolution on the excessive force. Didn't you have some insight into this, Caroline, that this was Minnesota specific? I can't, you were really new when this Centra.
Yeah, all I can say is I never made my council approve this in the 8 years that I managed HUD funding, but I'm discovering a lot of things are different here, so.
Interesting.
You know,
It's federal money with these extra kind of Minnesota policies tagged on.
I mean, technically it's federal, but I don't know, never had heard of it. It's from 1990. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just old policies just hanging around causing work.
And
causing work.
Minnesota is requiring it, but like I said, it was not required in my prior experience. So I do feel like, you know, I'm not sure. But I'm arguing about other things at this point, so I'm picking my battles.
Right. And we should perhaps keep that in mind. That's coming up, that we're, you know, the deed monies are not that easy to administer. We don't know if it's an agency level thing or just the particular contact that Caroline's working with, but I'll try not to cause any trouble for you additionally. All right, so do we have a motion to those 3 policies, not including the excessive force policy?
And move to approve those 3.
We have a motion from John. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second those 3.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote on those 3.
Fella,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Falcom,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Durant.
Yes. Okay, now we'll have a separate resolution on the excessive force policy that's required.
I have a inquiry about this.
Yes.
If this doesn't pass, do we lose that funding then?
That would be my understanding. They would not allow funding to flow if we don't adopt these policies. That's my experience working with federal money. In this case, it sounds like a state policy tagged onto this money.
Yeah, and this is the
I wanna
same.
clarify that I'm gonna vote for this so we don't lose the money, but I at the same time oppose it. I don't know what else to do.
We tried to clarify this on the last go around, and I think Mike Flaherty did confirm the assumption that, or the opinion that if we do not accept or approve these policies, then we don't get to participate in the program. Too much to our dismay, but that's, I think, the fact.
So we would entertain a motion to approve this separate excessive force policy requirement.
Say that again.
This one would just be a motion to accept the excessive force policy as a term of this funding.
Oh, who in their right mind is gonna approve that? I mean, seriously, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
I'm gonna vote yes, because I'm not concerned about excessive force in our police. I don't believe we have excessive force issues that are out of line with this policy. So I think Brian has a point that, they're entering into a level of local government that they really don't have a role in.
Well, that's true, but by doing the way we're doing it, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
I think I've been worn down over the years on federal grants, because there's a lot of this where organizations have to agree to the policy that the federal government sets forth, whether there is any indication that there would ever be an issue, or even if there were, that there would be any enforcement. And so maybe I'm a little unique in that way.
2 years ago, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Honestly, I would have voted it right through.
Joe, do you actually have a formal excessive force policy in effect?
Yeah, of course we do. If this wasn't a public meeting, I'd probably say a lot more on it, but yeah, it's telling you that you have to except, I guess what's the word? Like you have to agree that your police department is not going to break the civil rights of people, which is just insane in itself. But I don't know. It's what the feds have out there, I guess.
So this isn't a reflection on you, Joe, but I'll make a motion to approve this policy so we can continue on to attempt to provide funding to our businesses in town.
Second,
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? And we'll take a roll vote.
Walrick,
No.
Sella,
No.
Woodley,
No.
Falcon,
yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes,
Moyer,
Yes,
Duran.
Yes. That's healthy debate. I don't mind that one bit. And agreed, Joe, this isn't something that we think our police is lacking, needs adoption. It's just red tape, exactly, is what it is. So,
well, the only thing I don't like about this is now, tomorrow, I am gonna have people in my face because I voted for this. And yet I totally support our police department. And there was no reason why we had to pull this out. We made a big issue out of nothing.
those two things can be compatible, I think. So the requirements of the grant put us in the position where you have to decide how to handle it. And we have handled it. So we have, oops. That is our final general business item. We have the donations to consider. And to the library, $50 from John and Agatha Hubbard, $500 from Lori Hassinger and Steve Link, $100 in honor of Carol Pagel and John Oshner, from Jody and Howie Lang, $100 from Jean Johnstad, $25 from Craig and Nancy Falcom, $10 for children's chairs from Mary Helmuller, and $50 from an anonymous donor. Do we have a motion to accept the donations?
I move.
We have a second.
Second,
We have a second from, motion from, first from Tim and a second from Jeff. Any further discussion? We'll vote by roll.
Woodley. Friedmeier,
yes,
Moyer,
Yes,
Sella,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Falcon,
yes.
Duran.
Yes. You know, I've had somebody make a suggestion, which I'd be open to, which is moving the donations to the beginning of the agenda. I don't mind them at the end because it's always a nice way to end. But for those members of the public who don't attend the full meeting, I think it's a nice thing to recognize. So we can always consider a change in 2022, moving those donations to one of the first items of business. All right, with that, any other announcements? Otherwise, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
Tony? we got-
Tony, I see-
Yeah, I should have done this earlier, but so on November 13th, the fire department is going to be doing performing a house burn for training out at the brush dump. It's the older house that's in the back. So we're going to close the brush dump. So I probably will put something in paper and Facebook and broadcast it here. So we get as most people know that it's possible, but I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Thank you for that. Anything else? All right, we could have a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Heard Tim and Dean in concert. We'll have a first from Dean, a second from Tim. Any further discussion, or we'll vote by roll? All right, hearing none.
Moyer,
yes.
Falcon,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Duran.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully we'll be in person soon. Our numbers are going down in the county, and if you haven't but desire to get a booster shot, there's a clinic tomorrow offered by Public Health. Thanks for everything. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Okay, Tyler, I think you need to stay here. I don't think you can
Sorry,
go.
I'm not sure. I'm looking around to see if I can make you a host. I'm not sure how to do that. If that's possible.
This is probably not going to work very well. I'll just shoot you guys an email. Just kind of wanted to plan for the ambulance task force meeting.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you guys about it as well. So, maybe catch up with both you guys tomorrow or
Oh,
something.
wait. Okay. Now it's better. Okay. All right. And then he stopped the recording. Good. Okay.
Do you want to stop the